You can create this in Procreate. Today we're going to be making this cool 3D glass effect. First we're going to type out our text and structure it how we want, and then we're going to add some shadows and highlights. So let's get started. First, open the Procreate app and create a project that is the screen size. Click the spanner at the top, select add, and then hit add text. Now type in your text. I went with 2023, but you can type whatever you like. I'd recommend going with something short and sweet just because you'll have less to shade and highlight in the later steps. If you want to change the font, double tap the text and then select whichever font you'd like. I tried a few out, but in the end I went with one called Baskerville, which I think is included in Procreate already, so you don't have to download any. I made the font bold and increased the tracking a little bit so the letters are spaced out. This will just help us out for the next step. Now I'm just making the text black and making it bigger on the page, just so we can see a bit clearer what we're working with. Now select the icon next to the arrow and then select freehand and draw a circle around the first two. Then press the arrow again so we can move just the two in the layer. Repeat this process for the other numbers and then move them to a position that is roughly bottom right of the previous number. Once you have moved the numbers to where you want, click out of the arrow button so everything is regrouped again. Then click the arrow button again to enlarge the text so it fits the page. Now in the color picker, select the light grey and then drag and drop the color into the layer. You can pick any light color here, but I just went with grey because it works for me. Next we're going to change the angle of the text slightly so it's easier to give that 3D effect. Select the arrow button and click distort, and then on the top left point drag that to the bottom right slightly, and with the bottom left point move that up and right slightly just so it gives that slight angle. Go into your layers tab and select duplicate. On the bottom layer of the text, select a darker shade of grey and drag and drop that into the layer. Click the arrow button and move this to the right and down slightly, just like this. Now using the studio pen in the inking section, change the size of the brush to 9%, and then on the bottom layer we're going to start filling in all these gaps. This will make it look like the bottom layer and the top layer are part of one object rather than the bottom layer acting like a shadow. I'm just going to speed the video up a bit now because the process is quite repetitive, but take your time with it, and if you need to, slow the video down. Once that is done, go into the layers tab and swipe right so all the layers are selected, and then readjust the size so it fits the page nicely. Now click the spanner tool and select insert a photo. Now choose your background picture that you want to use. I'm using this picture of fireworks. I think it looks quite cool, but you can use whatever you like. Enlarge the photo so it takes up the whole background, and then adjust the positioning of it depending on what you want to show in the photo. Make sure this layer is above all the text, and in the layers tab, double tap this picture and select clipping mask. Swipe left on this picture and then duplicate it, and then move this layer all the way to the bottom underneath all the text. With this layer selected, click the icon next to the spanner and select Gaussian blur. Then drag your pencil to the right until you get to about 8%, or until the picture is quite blurry. Once you got this how you like, go into the layers tab and untick this layer, as we don't need it right now. Now go into the layers tab and select the picture that's already been clipping masked, and then create a new layer on top of that. Make sure the color in your color palette is black. Select the soft brush in the airbrushing set and change the size of this to 5%. Now we're going to add shadows to this layer, but make sure this layer is clipping masked. Now draw on the edge of the letters so the shadow is just on the border of the text. If you need to erase a line you've drawn, just tap the screen with 2 fingers. Once you've done this, decrease the opacity to about 88%. Then apply some Gaussian blur so the shadow isn't as defined. Now create a new layer and make sure the color white is selected so we can add some highlights. Use the soft brush again and draw gently near the edges of the numbers. If you want to add further highlights, decrease the brush size to 2% and then go over those highlights that you already made. This is just so the shine is a bit more defined. Once again, go into Gaussian blur and drag it until you get to about 5%, just so the highlights are a bit more blurry. Now select the picture that's been clipping masked and duplicate it, then move this under the light grey text but above the dark grey. Double tap this layer and make sure clipping mask is selected. With this layer selected, create a new layer and make sure clipping mask is enabled. Also change the colour back to black in the colour palette. Using the soft brush again, we're going to repeat the process and add shadows along the edge of the text. Now create a new layer and clip and mask it, change the color to white, and then we're going to add some subtle glow on the edge of the text. Once this is done, open the Layers tab and tick the background that we blurred at the start so it's visible. Then select the dark grey text layer and duplicate it. Then fill this new layer with black. On this black layer, click the arrow icon, select Freeform, use the top point and drag it all the way to the bottom. Then select Motion Blur and drag your pen to the right until you get to about 33%. And then that's your drawing complete. I hope this was useful. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and comment what you want to see next.